The RTX 4080 is coming, and let me tell you, you're not ready for it. You're not. Because they are going to be so powerful that you are going to need a new monitor to be able to actually get the most out of it. And this one is 1440p, which is a little bit yesterday's news, until you learn that it's 300 hertz. 300 hertz at 1440p. That is some serious pixels per second. So in today's video, we're going to find out whether this could possibly be worth the money. Not only for the monitor itself, but obviously for the new graphics card. Is this the future of gaming, or is this just another gimmick that you should leave firmly by the wayside? So let's find out exactly how good this thing is and whether it is the future of gaming monitors after a short word from this video sponsor. Lexar's LM800 SSD is here and offers crazy high performance for a very reasonable price. With read speeds up to a whopping 7400 megabytes a second, this PCI Gen 4 drive is perfect for super quick load times in the next gen games. Learn more today with the link below. So yes, this is a monitor from AOC. It is part of their Agon range. It's actually been out for quite a long time now. The whole idea with that is that it's meant to be a bit more of a premium brand, but still from AOC, who typically tend to make monitors that are a little bit more accessible. But this is going to be an expensive one. Something Agon pretty much always gets right is the stand. They're a lot better built than the classic AOC ones. Proper metal stand here, plenty of adjustments, and it looks good to boot too. Base of the stand just clips on and then toollessly screws into place. And then of course we have the monitor itself. But here we are, the Agon AG274QS. I'm sure there's some logic in there somewhere. Q probably stands for Quad HD, but it's not the most catchy name, is it? Oh, hang on a minute. We seem to have some sort of metal plate at the back for power delivery for the RGB, because this is an RGB monitor. Stand, clip, on, and there you have your 27-inch Quad HD 300 hertz monitor. It does resemble Team AMD, but rest assured you can use this with NVIDIA GPUs as well, hence the 4080 reference. But is a 27-inch monitor enough for what could be a very expensive GPU? You tell me. In terms of connectivity, we've got two HDMIs, two display ports. That's actually quite uncommon, so you can have two PCs plugged into this at once. One USB upstream, two downstream, headphone, and then a microphone jack. I believe inside the box you also get a very large power brick. But then the thing I was looking for, a remote that plugs into the monitor itself. This is often a cool little Agon feature. It's not going to be useful for everyone, but it's a nice thing to have if you want to quickly change settings on the fly. It's not something I think I would personally use, but I do understand there are people out there that would want this, especially if you're like a creator and a gamer and you want to sort of swap between modes. Fair enough. HDMI, DisplayPort, USB. For those interested, this is a 120 watt power brick. So this is going to use a fair bit of power, but then so is your gaming rig with an RTX 4080 in it. So it's bang on trend. Let's get this plugged in though, which means first removing my Alienware Super Duper Ultra Wide. And to be fair, this is another one of those monitors that really does require an awful lot of horsepower. And this is exactly what I was talking about in my RTX 4080 leak / everything you need to know video, because it's going to be so powerful that you really are going to need to have a really high-end setup and a high-end screen to actually make the GPU necessary. There's no point upgrading if you don't need that horsepower. So out goes the old and very much in with the new. That already looks tiny compared to what I had before. It's like I always say, once you go ultra wide, you never go back. But I think this is going to be absolutely insane for gaming. Right, here we go. And we have a little light up logo, actually, that comes out from the underneath. And right out the gate, that looks pretty good. It is IPS, so you've got brilliant viewing angles, both top and bottom. You've got full height adjust, swivel, everything really you need. I mean, a 27-inch 1440p monitor very much is the sweet spot. It has been for quite a while now, but it is very much still the case in terms of size and pixel density, because it's enough that you can see everything that's going on, but then you've still got enough pixels for everything to remain super sharp. I mean, it's definitely not 4K quality, but this is a monitor that's all about speed, not extra resolution that for gaming doesn't really matter, especially not at this size. But of course the question is, can I actually tell this is 300 hertz, and does it make a difference? We go into the NVIDIA control panel. This is not validated as G-Sync compatible. It might be in the future. I know they're working on FreeSync Premium Pro. They currently say it will be validated. So at the moment, I guess that means it's not, but it's adaptive sync. So let's enable that. And then we can go to resolution. And indeed, we do have 300 hertz. I mucked up my words a little bit there and didn't get my sentence out, but I assure you, this is still very much my first sight, if you like, of test UFO, and that looks absolutely insane. That is very close to OLED. I don't think it's quite as good, but I'm being very nitpicky here. And of course, the thing OLED can't do is get as fast as 300 hertz. So whilst the perceived blur might be less, the actual usable performance of this monitor, in theory, should actually be better because you've got more information coming in from your game, so you actually have the frames to see, rather than just relying on the perceived motion clarity itself. I tell you what though, a slight negative that I have noticed with this is that there is a little bit of banding on the screen. I mean, this is not a normal test because obviously the color is completely the same, but you can see very minor visible streaks going down here. It's only going to matter when you're looking at a constant color, but it is definitely something to note. But that clarity is mad. 300 hertz, I can see the appeal. There are only two other screens that get close to this, and that is the OLED panel and then the 360 hertz Acer X25 that I saw last year. That is impressive. While this is definitely a very good looking display, especially for gaming, which is obviously what this is targeted at, it's not the absolute best IPS panel I've ever used. Obviously this isn't designed for content creation, so it doesn't matter too much, but you should be aware that this isn't one of the absolute best IPS panels I've used out there, as it's only got 76% of DCI-P3 and a little bit lower of Adobe RGB, so it's going to be fine for what most people want to use it for. But if you're a prosumer, gamer come colorist, it's not going to be perfect. Here we go then, Cyberpunk 2077 on our super duper monitor. And this is in HDR. This does support HDR, it's HDR 600, so it's not going to be the absolute best, but it looks pretty bright. I'd say this looks better than it would in standard dynamic range. I mean, this is definitely a great looking display, absolutely no doubts about it. For a 27-inch Quad HD IPS monitor, definitely up there with one of the best. But Cyberpunk is a prime example of a game where you're just not getting your money's worth really out of this sort of monitor. But you're not going to be getting anywhere close to 300 frames a second with this. So while the latency of the monitor is very low, which is a brilliant thing, so this isn't really going to be worth it if you primarily play a lot of story games like this. This is very much more for people that want to play multiplayer and people that want to play very competitively. No, the HDR is not bad actually. I've turned it off and you can see an immediate difference. There's just not that level of dynamic range to the image. It's not as bright, it's not as contrasty. AOC's implementation actually quite good. It's definitely not going to have the largest amount of dimming zones or anything like that, but it's a nice feature that I would genuinely turn on. There are also speakers built into this, by the way. They're not the absolute best, but they don't actually sound too tinny, so this will get you by in a pinch, but I would highly recommend a soundbar or speakers or headphones. Oh, and before I forget, the lighting on the back is very weak. This is where the action starts. Apex Legends, the game that I actively choose to play when it comes to multiplayer anyway. And this should be a title where we are at least able to get close to 300 hertz. We're currently running off an RTX 3080. And at absolute max settings, we're getting around about 212 frames a second, maybe a little bit more or less depending on when and where you are in the game. And this is exactly why I said at the start of this video that this is very much a monitor that's geared towards next-gen GPUs, because even with a 3080, which is, let's be honest, pretty much 10% off a 3090 or 3090 Ti, there's not really anything that you could get at the moment that would fully saturate this monitor in most of the games that you want to play. Apex isn't the most demanding title out there, but it's definitely not the easiest to play either. We've got trouble, we've got trouble! Yep, thank you very much, still got it. And it immediately doesn't take long to work out that this is a very, very impressive monitor when it comes to responsiveness, feel, just general blur. Oh, that's amazing timing. You taking the Michaels? Right, let's try that again. But as I was trying to say, this is a monitor that absolutely feels fantastic. There's no doubt about this. If you do want to play a game like Apex Legends or anything really that is competitive, a 16:9 display is your best bet because the games are pretty much designed to show you all of the details. Nothing gets distorted or lost. Moving the mouse around is super smooth, everything is very responsive, and I would say that this is one of the monitors that will get you in the best positions possible to be your absolute best. I wouldn't say that this is going to magically turn you into a better gamer, but it certainly is going to help if you are good at multiplayer titles. Oh, I'm gonna die! No! I'm brown bread. I'm brown bread. Oh, constantly being interrupted this video. What I was trying to say, again, is I think the elephant in the room with this monitor is that it's not really doing anything drastically different to an already very expensive 240Hz 1440p display, because unless you're exceeding that consistently, you're paying for a benefit that you're just not really getting. So even if this is the future of next generation gaming and monitors like this will get very affordable, the graphics cards to drive them will also be, it's definitely never going to be a must-have. And I think I am personally struggling to think why you would want to pay a load of extra money for 300Hz 1440p if this is your form factor. I sort of get it really if you're going for like an esports 1080p super fast display, nothing else matters apart from the speed. But here you're paying for that little bit of extra resolution, and in a game like Apex, it might matter. I guess battle royales where you're looking into the distance, it could come in handy, but we are getting into properly niche territory now. However, a lot of you are probably screaming at the display, it's not about Apex, it's about something that you can actually drive. So let's try some Valorant. And yeah, this is what it's all about. Because with Valorant, even at max settings, 1440p, I'm still able to get over 300 FPS pretty much at all times. And this is very much an experience I haven't seen before, because to have that combination of the image quality, this is a very good looking panel, you've got that extra resolution, but then all of the fluidity associated with 300Hz, it's bizarre, it's really hard to describe. It's butter smooth, but everything is also super sharp. There's no sort of obvious smearing or anything. This is fantastic. Right, I'm gonna see if I can actually get some kills now. Thank you, double kill. And I'll tell you what, I can honestly see the appeal of this if you are going to be using this in some form of esports tournament, or if you've got a 3080, 4080 at home and you just want the most competitive experience possible, but you've got so many frames per second that you don't need to play at 1080p, then that does make sense, because you're clearly not having to compromise with Valorant. I think that's the key thing. You're not making any compromises. You're not having that lower FPS because you've got so much in hand. Do you like how I did that very casually? I think if you were to ask me to describe this monitor in a word, it would be sleeper, because this does not look like anything particularly special. It's only when you get into a game like Valorant or anything where you're easily able to pump in those big 300 FPS figures that this thing really starts to come alive and makes you realize that this is definitely a monitor worth thinking about. The problem is though that it's still so niche that it would be fairly difficult to recommend anyway, because obviously there are loads of other types of monitors like ultra wides, high resolutions, now OLED and things. But when you factor in the price point, it gets just a little bit more tricky, if I'm honest, because this currently sits at £930 RRP. £930 for a 27-inch monitor. That is just too steep, really, to recommend to most people. I don't think you'd be disappointed if you were the right consumer for this, but I mean, realistically, who has £930 to spend on a monitor for Valorant? Not really many people other than the pros, so they will love this. But for you, I think there are probably other monitors that I would pay closer attention to. You think you can spend about £100, £150 more, and you can then realistically start looking at the OLED that I personally have been using. If you went for something that was 240Hz, that would be getting on for not quite half the price, but not that far off, so you could almost have two of those monitors and you'd be in the same sort of pricing territory as this. This is one hell of a screen, make no mistake, but I think it's another one of those ones that's very much cool to look at, maybe not the one to buy. If you're looking for a monitor like this, seriously, look at the Agon version that is 240Hz and just save yourself a load of money. But that's what I think anyway. What do you guys make of this? Do you think 1440p 300Hz is the future? Or would you rather have 4K 120 1080p, 500 Hz. I'd love to hear from you. If you've enjoyed this, smash that like button, get yourself subscribed and join the PC Centric Discord. I know the verification process has been a little bit tricky, but it works now, I promise. It's linked down in the description below. And of course, if you do want to check out current pricing on this monitor or anything else that's in my setup, you can also find that linked in the description down below. And while you're down there, why not bask in the speed of Lexar's NM800 SSD? If you want to add super fast storage to your computer, then the NM800 is incredibly easy to install, requiring just a small screwdriver and just a minute of your time. Get your PC geared up today with the link below. Thank you so much for watching. I'll catch you in the next one.